Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Tony Vlahos, Chief Marketing Officer of ExecuNet, and my very special guest today is Professor and best-selling author David Burkus. Creativity is one of these mysterious processes undertaken by the human brain. We don't really know what it is or how it works, but we tend to think of it as something only certain people can do, right? Artists, but not the rest of us. Well, today David will be exploding that and other big myths surrounding creativity. And most important, he'll be talking to us about how people and companies really come up with great business ideas. You're in for a real treat, and it's part of our commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with great people and insight that can take you and your organization to the next level. So let's begin. Today's presenter, when he's not speaking or waiting in an airport lounge, David Burkus is in the classroom teaching courses on organizational behavior, creativity and innovation, and strategic leadership at Oral Roberts University. David is the author of the bestseller, The Myths of Creativity. His writing has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Psychology Today, Inc., Bloomberg, Business Week, the Financial Times, and the Harvard Business Review. He has delivered talks and workshops for Fortune 500 companies such as Microsoft and in-demand conferences such as South by Southwest and TEDx, and he's even spoken to governmental leaders at the U.S. Naval Academy and elsewhere. So he's finally also the founder and host of, let me try to get this right, David, LDRLB, pronounced Leadership or Leader Lab. And he says it's a long story, folks. A podcast that shares insight on leadership, innovation, and strategy. David, it's such a pleasure to welcome you to the ExecuNet stage. They're all yours.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, I apologize on the podcast thing. I learned a very important lesson about intellectual property, and that's that just because you have a domain name open, sometimes people still have the trademark to it. So we were originally called Leader Lab, just all one word, and then we got a very nice, well, strongly worded but nice letter from an attorney. So we pulled all the vowels out, and that's where the LDRLB came from. But now everybody listening knows the secret. It's become this little thing. If you know how to say the word LDROB, you know to pronounce it Leader Lab, then you're clearly a podcast listener, so you're part of the family. So now you all know you're all part of the family, so that's awesome. So thank you all so much for having me, for spending some time with me today. I want to share some of the more potent myths that I think affect individuals and teams as far as trying to be more innovative or lead more innovation projects, or even just trying to stimulate more creativity. And one of the things that's interesting about a book is that when you write a book is never done, it just gets published. And so there are things that you discover, things that other people tell you after they've interacted with the book that you think like, wow, that's so brilliant, and I wish I could have gone back and written this in. And so for me, one of the biggest things is I wish I could have started the book with this phrase: the stories that we tell ourselves are true even if they're not true. The stories that we tell ourselves are true even if they're not true. They're true even if they're false. They're true even if they have no basis in reality. They're true even if they have some basis in reality. The reason is, in psychology, it's referred to as confirmation bias. We selectively filter in and filter out things that conform or prove our worldview, and we filter out things that don't conform to our worldview. And you know, I use this example a lot. If you've ever been shopping for a car, my wife and I bought a Nissan Murano about a year ago or so, and suddenly there are Nissan Muranos all over the place, right? And even when I see a Rogue or a Pathfinder, I think it's a Murano, the midsize one, right? It's not like the world conspired to buy more right when I bought more. It's just that my mind is filtering out other cars and filtering in that one when I see it. And the other sort of really easy revelation is last month, you know, we had a midterm election. And if you don't believe in confirmation bias, go back and think through your friends on Facebook or LinkedIn, the people who post really, really political stuff. And you can see confirmation bias at work, right? And especially people you disagree with, and you think, where in the world did that come from? Why is it they don't think the way that I do? That's confirmation bias. That's them filtering out information that doesn't confirm their worldview. And the depressing thing is, it affects us too. So when we look at somebody and go, I have no idea where that came from, that's confirmation bias, because we don't see the same thing. So the stories that we tell ourselves are true even if they're not true. And in the case of creativity, the real concept for this book and this idea of the myths of creativity came from exactly that. Myths. Even if you do that, though, there's still a lot of myths and stories that need to be recreated. And one of the ones I think is the most interesting inside of a work context is what I call the expert myth. You remember that expertise was one of our circles. Expertise is really important. And we tend to think that when we have a hard problem, we pass it over to the experts. We pass it over to the people who have worked on problems like this the longest. And that's true, but interestingly, it's only true to a point. So in the realm of physics, in the academic realm of physics, there's a really interesting joke that says if you don't do Nobel Prize winning work by the time you're 30, you should probably retire, just get tenure track, focus on teaching, stop doing research. You're not going to have a Nobel Prize winning insight past 30. And that's really mean because 30 is really young in the career of an academic. But it actually holds a little bit of weight. So if you look at the average age when the authors of a study that won the Nobel Prize published that study, it actually floats between 29 and 31. I mean, there are people who get it older, there are people who get it younger, but the median is right around there. And I think that's really curious. If you look at a lot of different domains, what you actually find is instead of expertise and creative output going up together, as expertise goes up, creative output goes up for a little bit, but when it reaches a top point, creative output can actually go down. And I think this is a really curious thing because this is not how we structure our lives, right? The longer you work in an organization, the higher a salary you get because you have more expertise and therefore have more to contribute. You also have more responsibility, but the idea of giving you more responsibility was because you had more expertise. But interestingly, a lot of these incredibly creative, disruptive innovations come from people who are in earlier stages in their career. Einstein, we all think about Einstein and physics and the Nobel Prize, and he was older than 30 when he won it. He was 46 years old, but he won it for work he published at 26. And so a researcher by the name of Dean Keith Simonton wanted to look into, first he sort of discovered this phenomenon, and then he wanted to figure out why is this? Because I'll be honest with you, especially as I get older, I don't like the idea that more expertise means a limit on my creativity, and so I want to know what can I do to not have this as a death sentence. And so he looked at it, and what he found is that in order to do creative work, to come up with innovative insights, whether it be physics papers, whether it be patented products, whatever it is, or technologies, business models, whatever it is, you have two rates, if you will. You have an ideation rate and you have an elaboration rate. This just goes right along with, if you think about the 5 stages of Csikszentmihalyi's process. You have a rate at which you come up with new ideas, and then you have a rate at which you actually test out those ideas, give them an earnest try. Ideation rate, the second one's elaboration rate. As you grow in expertise, the ideation rate continues to go up. Throughout your career, it continues to go up. What he found was that the elaboration rate is what tables off and eventually starts dropping down, makes sort of an inverted U pattern. And so as you grow in expertise, you're elaborating on more and more and more, and then slowly you start elaborating on the same amount of ideas, and eventually you only actually